She pressed her lips against the stranger's mouth with desperate urgency, her heart hammering as she whispered against his skin, "Please play along, he's watching." What she didn't know was that this one kiss would unravel both their carefully guarded worlds. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The reflection in the coffee shop window made Zara's stomach clench. Same black hoodie. Same purposeful stride. Same sick smile that had haunted her for 3 months. She gripped her laptop bag tighter, forcing herself to maintain steady breathing as Marcus, her stalker, positioned himself across the street, pretending to check his phone while his eyes remained locked on her through the glass. The afternoon Seattle drizzle created perfect cover for his surveillance, droplets obscuring his face just enough to make her question her sanity in those brief moments before recognition struck like ice water. "Another vanilla latte, miss?" The barista's kind voice barely registered through the white noise of panic filling Zara's ears. "No, thank you," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. 3 months of this had taught her to function while terrified, to smile while screaming inside, to work while watching every shadow for movement. The marketing presentation on her laptop screen blurred as she forced herself to focus. Jenkins and Associates had given her this freelance contract based on her portfolio, not knowing that her best creative work now came from a mind constantly calculating escape routes. Fear had sharpened her instincts in unexpected ways, including her ability to read people's intentions from across a crowded room. Like the man at the corner table. She'd noticed him the moment she'd entered. Impossible not to, really. Tall, dark-skinned, with shoulders that filled his perfectly tailored charcoal suit like he'd been born wearing armor. His fingers moved across his tablet with the precision of someone accustomed to making million-dollar decisions, but his jaw carried tension that spoke of burdens she couldn't imagine. Adrian Cross had built his empire by reading people, by anticipating their moves before they made them. 20 years of boardroom warfare had honed his instincts to razor sharpness, which was why the woman by the window had captured his attention so completely. She was trying too hard to appear calm. Her fingers drummed against her coffee cup in a pattern that screamed anxiety, and her eyes kept darting to the street with the wariness of prey sensing a predator. Beautiful, strikingly so, with natural hair pulled back in a style that emphasized the elegant line of her neck and cheekbones that belonged in an art gallery. But it was the intelligence in her dark eyes, the way she carried herself despite obvious fear, that made him forget about the quarterly projections demanding his attention. He'd noticed the man outside too, had catalogued the way the stranger's attention focused on her with an intensity that set Adrian's protective instincts humming. In his world, he'd learned to recognize obsession. It usually involved his money. This felt different, darker. Zara's hands trembled as she packed her laptop. Marcus had moved closer, now standing directly in front of the coffee shop's entrance. Waiting. Always waiting with that patient smile that said he had all the time in the world to make her life hell. The first time she'd seen him, she'd been flattered by his persistence. Flowers at her office. Notes under her apartment door. He'd seemed harmless then, a little intense maybe, but she'd dealt with overeager admirers before. That was before the gifts became demands. Before the love letters became threats. Before no became a word that seemed to bounce off him like rain off glass. Now, 3 restraining orders and 2 police reports later, Marcus had learned to be cleverer. Never close enough to arrest, always just visible enough to remind her that he was watching. Waiting for his moment. What would you do if someone's obsession with you became your daily nightmare? Drop a comment and share your thoughts. I read every single one. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but she knew who it was. Beautiful color on you today, Zara. Red was always my favorite. She looked down at her burgundy sweater, then back at the window. Marcus waved. That's when her carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Adrian saw the exact moment her control shattered. Saw the way her shoulders sagged, the way her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Saw her look around the coffee shop with the desperate eyes of someone seeking an exit that didn't exist. Their gazes met across the crowded cafe, and something electric passed between them. Not attraction, though he felt that too, but recognition. She was drowning, and somehow she sensed he might be the lifeline she needed. Zara made a decision that would change everything. She stood up, walked directly to his table, and sat down across from him without invitation. Up close, she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow that spoke of childhood adventures or adult battles. "I need your help," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "There's a man outside who won't leave me alone, and I think if he believes I'm with someone, he might finally back off." Adrian closed his tablet slowly, giving her his full attention. Something about her directness, her refusal to make this about anything other than survival, commanded his respect. "What do you need me to do?" The simple question, asked without hesitation or demand for explanation, nearly broke her. When was the last time someone had simply offered to help without wanting something in return? Just sit here with me for a few minutes? Maybe walk me to my car? I know it's crazy to ask a stranger, but... "It's not crazy," Adrian said firmly. "And you're not asking a stranger anymore. I'm Adrian. Zara." The name felt different on her lips when she wasn't afraid to say it. Through the window, Marcus's expression had shifted from patient satisfaction to confused irritation. His prey had found an ally, and he didn't like the change in dynamics. But it was about to get much more complicated than either Zara or Adrian could imagine. Marcus pushed through the coffee shop door with the confidence of a man who'd never heard the word no in any language that mattered to him. The bell's cheerful chime felt obscene against the sudden tension that filled the space like smoke. Zara's entire body went rigid. "He's coming in." Adrian didn't turn around. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a tone that somehow managed to be both gentle and absolutely commanding. "Look at me, Zara. Only me." But she couldn't. Her peripheral vision tracked Marcus's approach like a prey animal watching a predator circle closer. 3 months of this had rewired her nervous system. Every cell in her body screamed danger as his familiar cologne reached her nostrils. That sickeningly sweet mixture of sandalwood and obsession that had once seemed pleasant and now made her stomach turn. "Zara, baby," Marcus's voice carried across the small cafe, drawing curious glances from other patrons. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." The casual intimacy in his tone made her skin crawl. "Baby." Like they'd ever been anything more than a woman trying to be polite to a persistent stranger and a man who'd decided politeness meant possession. "I don't know him," she whispered to Adrian, her voice barely audible. "I need you to know that. We were never." "I believe you." Adrian's response was immediate, unquestioning, and somehow that simple faith gave her the strength to lift her chin. Marcus arrived at their table with a smile that never reached his eyes. Up close, his handsome features carried an edge of wrongness that made Adrian's protective instincts flare white-hot. This wasn't love or even attraction. This was ownership disguised as devotion. "Hey, beautiful." Marcus ignored Adrian completely, his attention laser-focused on Zara with an intensity that made the air itself feel thick. "You didn't answer my text. That's not like you. I think you have me confused with someone else," Zara managed, proud that her voice didn't shake. "I don't know you." Marcus laughed, a sound like breaking glass wrapped in velvet. "Come on, don't be like that. Not in front of He finally acknowledged Adrian with a dismissive glance. "Whoever this is." That's when Adrian stood up. At 6'3", with shoulders that suggested he'd earned his physical presence through more than just good genetics, Adrian had learned that sometimes his mere presence could end conversations before they became problems. Marcus was tall too, but where Marcus carried the wiry build of someone who'd never been truly challenged, Adrian possessed the quiet confidence of a man who'd been tested and had refused to break. "The lady said she doesn't know you," Adrian said quietly. His tone held the kind of authority that came from running boardrooms where million-dollar decisions hung on every word. "I think it's time for you to leave." Marcus's smile widened, but his eyes went cold. "And you are?" "Someone who listens when a woman says no." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Around them, the coffee shop had gone quiet, that particular silence that precedes either violence or backing down. Zara could feel the weight of every gaze, the held breath of strangers watching to see which way this would tip. Marcus stepped closer to their table, his body language shifting into something more predatory. "Zara and I have history. Don't we, baby? Stop calling me that." The words ripped from Zara's throat with more force than she'd intended, drawing stares from nearby tables. "I've told you 100 times. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. I don't want anything to do with you." "You don't mean that." Marcus's voice took on a coaxing quality that made Zara's skin crawl. "You're just confused. Overwhelmed. Let me help you." "She's not confused." The interruption came from Adrian, but something in his tone had changed. Gone was the corporate diplomacy, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. Zara looked up at him and saw a man who'd clearly dealt with his share of people who didn't understand boundaries. Marcus's facade finally cracked. "Look, friend, this is between me and my girl." "I'm not your girl." Zara's voice cracked with 3 months of suppressed fury and fear. "I've never been your girl. I went on one coffee date with you, and when I said I wasn't interested, you should have accepted that. Normal people accept that." "One date." Marcus's laugh turned bitter. "We have a connection, Zara. You felt it too. You can't just throw that away because you're scared of how intense it is." That's when Zara realized talking wouldn't work. Logic wouldn't work. Witnesses wouldn't work. Marcus lived in a reality where her rejection was just fear, where her horror was just confusion, where her explicit no was really a try harder. She looked at Adrian, this stranger who'd shown her more respect in 10 minutes than Marcus had in 3 months, and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "I'm sorry," she whispered, just loud enough for Adrian to hear. Then she reached up, cupped his face in her hands, and kissed him. The world stopped. Not metaphorically. It actually felt like time hiccuped, like the universe paused to recalibrate around this single point of contact. Zara had meant it to be quick, performative, just enough to convince Marcus that she was taken. Instead, the moment Adrian's lips touched hers, everything else disappeared. His mouth was warm, gentle despite his obvious surprise. His hands came up to frame her face with a tenderness that made her chest ache. This was supposed to be pretend, but the way he kissed her back, careful, questioning but undeniably real, sent electricity shooting down her spine. For a heartbeat that lasted an eternity, neither of them remembered why this had started. There was only the taste of coffee on his lips, only the way her pulse jumped when his thumb traced her cheekbone, only the way 3 months of fear melted away under the protective strength of his arms. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Marcus stood frozen, his face cycling through confusion, rage, and something that looked like genuine shock. For the first time in 3 months, he seemed to realize that Zara was a real person with real choices, not just an object for his obsession. "Well," Adrian said softly, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. "That was unexpected." The elevator in Adrian's downtown office building hummed with expensive efficiency as it carried Zara toward the 42nd floor. She stared at her reflection in the polished steel doors, trying to convince herself this was just gratitude, not the lingering electricity she'd felt every time Adrian's hand had brushed hers during their escape from the coffee shop. This is insane, she thought, clutching the business card he'd pressed into her palm. Adrian Cross, CEO, Cross Industries. She'd Googled him in the Uber. Billionaire. Forbes 40 under 40. The kind of man who dated supermodels and socialites, not freelance marketing consultants who attracted stalkers. Ms. Williams. The receptionist's smile was professionally warm, but her eyes held the calculating assessment of someone paid to keep the wrong people away from very important men. Mr. Cross is expecting you. 20 minutes earlier, Adrian had insisted on seeing her safely to her car, but Marcus had vanished, which somehow felt more ominous than his presence. He'll be back, Adrian had said with the certainty of someone who understood predators. You shouldn't be alone tonight. Now, walking through the marble and glass reception area that probably cost more than her annual income, Zara wondered if she'd traded one dangerous situation for another. Not physical danger, every instinct told her Adrian was safe, but emotional danger. The kind that came from letting yourself hope for things you couldn't have. The receptionist led her down a hallway lined with awards and newspaper clippings. Cross Industries donates $50 million to education reform. Tech mogul's privacy initiative changes industry standards. The reluctant billionaire. Adrian Cross shunned spotlight. She'd kissed this man. This careful, powerful stranger who could buy and sell her entire world without checking his bank balance. The memory of his mouth on hers sent heat spiraling through her chest, a warmth she ruthlessly suppressed. It had been survival, nothing more. But the way he'd kissed her back. Zara. Adrian's voice from the doorway scattered her thoughts. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and somehow the small concessions to casualness only emphasized the controlled power in his every movement. Come in. His office was a study in understated luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, artwork that belonged in museums, a desk that could have served as a landing pad for small aircraft. But it was the subtle security features she noticed. Cameras discreetly positioned, reinforced glass, multiple exit routes. This was the workspace of a man who understood that wealth made him a target. I'm sorry for what happened back there, she said quickly before he could speak. Distance. She needed distance from the way he was looking at her, like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve rather than an obligation he needed to discharge. The kiss, I mean. I shouldn't have. I was desperate, and you were kind enough to help, and I took advantage. Stop. The single word carried enough authority to silence a boardroom full of executives. You did what you had to do. I'm not complaining. The slight smile that accompanied his words made her stomach flutter traitorously. She forced herself to focus on why she was here. Practical matters, not the memory of his hands on her face. I looked you up. The admission felt like a confession. I had no idea who you were when I asked for help. Good. His response surprised her. That's the first genuine interaction I've had in months. Do you know how refreshing it is to be someone's last resort instead of their lottery ticket? The bitterness in his voice caught her off guard. She'd expected arrogance, condescension, maybe impatience at having his valuable time wasted by her problems. Instead, she heard loneliness. I've arranged security for you, Adrian continued, settling into the chair across from her rather than behind his imposing desk. Professional, discreet. Marcus won't get near you again. I can't afford. You're not paying for it. The flat finality in his tone sparked her temper. 3 months of feeling helpless had left her raw, protective of what little independence she had left. I don't need a white knight, Mr. Cross. It's Adrian. And I'm not trying to rescue you. I'm trying to help you rescue yourself. He leaned forward, his expression serious. That man today. He's not going to stop because you kissed someone else. If anything, it'll make him angrier. More determined to win you back. The truth of it hit her like ice water. Marcus wouldn't see the kiss as proof she'd moved on. He'd see it as theft. Someone had taken what belonged to him. So what do you suggest? Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. Let me help. Properly. My security team can keep you safe while we document everything. Build a case the police can't ignore. The way Adrian said, we, like they were partners in this. Like her problems had somehow become his problems. The offer was generous. Too generous. Men like Adrian Cross didn't involve themselves in the messy lives of ordinary people without expecting something in return. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. The question seemed to surprise him. Nothing. Everyone wants something. Maybe that's why you attract the wrong kind of attention. His words weren't cruel, but they stung. Maybe you're so used to people wanting pieces of you that you can't recognize someone who just wants to help. The accusation hit uncomfortably close to home. How many times had she given her time, her energy, her body to people who saw her as a commodity rather than a person? How many relationships had started with someone wanting her connections, her skills, her beauty, but never just her? The kiss was a mistake, she said firmly, as much to herself as to him. It was desperation, not anything else. I don't want you to think I'm some kind of opportunist who... The kiss was perfect. The quiet intensity in his voice stopped her mid-sentence. He stood up, moved to the window, his back to her as he looked out over the city. It was honest, he continued. Brave. And it woke up parts of me I'd forgotten existed. So no, Zara, I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was the first real thing that's happened to me in years. The confession hung between them like a bridge she was afraid to cross. This was dangerous territory, the kind where her heart could get broken by someone who lived in a different stratosphere. I should go. She stood up, her legs unsteady. Thank you for the offer, but I'll handle Marcus myself. Will you? Adrian turned back to her, and she saw something in his eyes that looked almost like disappointment. The same way you've been handling him for the past 3 months? The words were a challenge and a truth she didn't want to face. She'd been handling Marcus by running, hiding, hoping he'd lose interest. It wasn't working. But accepting Adrian's help meant accepting the possibility that the kiss had meant something to both of them. And that was a risk she wasn't sure she could survive. The fire alarm in Adrian's building began wailing 30 seconds after Zara stepped into the elevator to leave. Emergency lighting bathed the marble lobby in harsh red as automated systems kicked in, sealing exits and directing everyone toward the designated safe zones. Ladies and gentlemen, the building's PA system crackled to life. This is not a drill. Please proceed calmly to your assigned emergency areas and await further instructions. Zara found herself swept along with a crowd of confused office workers and visitors, all funneling toward the building's underground parking garage. The irony wasn't lost on her. Trying to escape one dangerous situation only to find herself trapped in another. She spotted Adrian immediately among the crowd. Even in crisis, he carried himself with the calm authority of someone accustomed to managing chaos. He was speaking quietly into his phone, probably coordinating with building security or his own team. Their eyes met across the sea of people, and she saw the exact moment his expression shifted from professional concern to something more personal. More urgent. Zara. He appeared at her side as if he'd teleported, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. Are you hurt? I'm fine, but what's happening? Is there really a fire? Before Adrian could answer, his phone buzzed. She watched his face darken as he read the message, watched his jaw clench in a way that made her stomach drop. What is it? Someone called in a bomb threat. His voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the steel underneath, specifically targeting the 42nd floor. My floor. The words hit her like ice water. Marcus. It wasn't a question, and Adrian didn't treat it like one. My security chief is pulling camera footage now, but yes. I think your admirer decided to escalate. Around them, the crowd was growing restless. What had started as an orderly evacuation was beginning to fray as people realized they might be trapped underground for hours. The parking garage, while spacious, wasn't designed to house several hundred people indefinitely. "This is my fault," Zara whispered, the guilt crushing her chest like a physical weight. "He saw us together and now he's—" "Hey!" Adrian's hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. The gesture was so reminiscent of their kiss that her breath caught. "This is not on you. You didn't make him into what he is. But I made him angry. I embarrassed him in public, and now innocent people are. Now a dangerous man is showing his true colors where the authorities can see them," Adrian interrupted firmly. "Which is exactly what we needed to happen." The logic of his words didn't ease the sick feeling in her stomach. She'd spent 3 months trying to handle Marcus quietly, hoping he'd lose interest, afraid that confronting him would make things worse. Now her worst fears were coming true, except instead of just threatening her, he was threatening everyone around her. "Attention building occupants," the PA system announced. "We anticipate an extended delay while emergency services complete their sweep. Please remain in the designated areas. Water and basic supplies are being distributed." A collective groan rose from the crowd. Extended delay could mean anything from 2 hours to 2 days, depending on what the bomb squad found or didn't find. "I can't stay here," Zara said suddenly, looking around at the families with children, the elderly people looking confused and frightened. "All these people are in danger because of me. I need to. You need to stay exactly where you are." Adrian's voice carried the kind of authority that brooked no argument, but his eyes were gentle. "Running away won't protect them. It'll just make you easier to find." He was right, and she hated it. Hated feeling helpless. Hated being the reason for other people's fear. Hated that Marcus had found a way to trap her even when she'd thought she was escaping. "Ms. Williams." A woman in a crisp security uniform approached them. "I'm Sarah Chen, head of security for Cross Industries. Mr. Cross asked me to brief you on the situation." Adrian nodded. "What do we know?" The threat was called in from a burner phone approximately 15 minutes after Ms. Williams left the building, Sarah reported efficiently. "Very specific details about your office layout, Mr. Cross. Whoever made the call had been watching the building for some time. Surveillance footage? We're reviewing it now, but I can confirm we have clear images of an individual matching the description Ms. Williams provided earlier. He's been positioned across the street for the past several hours." Zara felt Adrian's tension increase, a subtle tightening of muscles that spoke of carefully controlled anger. "Current status?" "Building security is cooperating fully with Seattle PD and the FBI. The threat is almost certainly false, designed to cause disruption rather than actual harm. But protocols require a full sweep before anyone can return to the upper floors." "How long?" Sarah's pause was telling. "Best case scenario. 6 hours. More realistically, we might be here overnight." The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. Overnight. Trapped underground with hundreds of strangers, all because Marcus couldn't accept that she didn't want him. The walls of the parking garage suddenly felt like they were closing in. "I need air," she said, then immediately felt stupid. They were underground. There was no air that didn't smell like concrete and car exhaust. But Adrian understood. Sarah, is the stairwell to the main lobby accessible? Emergency personnel only, but... Sarah glanced around at the increasingly restless crowd, then made a decision. I can arrange a brief escort. 5 minutes. Adrian looked at Zara. Want some company? She wanted to say no. Wanted to maintain the distance she'd been trying to create between them. But the alternative was staying here, surrounded by people whose lives she'd disrupted, drowning in guilt and claustrophobia. Yes. The stairwell was blissfully quiet after the chaos of the parking garage. Just her, Adrian, and a discreet security guard who positioned himself far enough away to give them privacy while keeping them safe. This is what you meant, isn't it? Zara said quietly, sinking onto one of the concrete steps. About Marcus getting worse. Adrian sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body in the cool stairwell. Men like him don't know how to lose. They escalate until they're stopped. And how do we stop him? We don't run. We don't hide. We make it clear that you're not alone anymore. The word "we" sent a flutter through her chest that she tried to ignore. But down here, in this quiet space away from the crowd, with hours stretching ahead of them, ignoring her feelings for Adrian was becoming impossible. What would you do if someone's obsession put innocent people in danger? Share your thoughts below. Would you face the threat head-on or try to disappear? You don't owe me anything, she said suddenly. After tonight, after this is over, you can go back to your life, and I'll figure out mine. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost vulnerable. What if I don't want to go back to my life? 3 hours into their underground exile, the parking garage had transformed into an impromptu refugee camp. Families had claimed corners with makeshift blankets. Business people sat in circles sharing phone chargers, and someone had started a quiet card game near the elevators. The initial panic had settled into resigned patience, but Zara could feel the weight of every concerned glance, every whispered conversation about the bomb threat. She and Adrian had found a relatively quiet spot near his reserved parking space, where his matte black Aston Martin sat like a sleeping predator among the more modest vehicles. The concrete wall behind them was cold, but Adrian had given her his suit jacket hours ago, and it still carried the warm scent of his cologne. Tell me about him, Adrian said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence they'd fallen into. How did this start? Zara pulled his jacket tighter around her shoulders. She'd been dreading this conversation, but after everything that had happened, he deserved the truth. Community center fundraiser, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. 6 months ago. I was doing the marketing for their annual gala. Pro bono work. Marcus was there representing some tech startup, looking successful and charming. He seemed safe. The word tasted bitter now. Safe. What a joke. He asked me to dance, bought me a drink, made me laugh. Asked for my number. She shrugged, trying to make it sound casual, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her. I was coming off a bad breakup. My ex had been cheating with his assistant for months, and I found out on social media like some teenager. So when this handsome, successful man seemed genuinely interested. You were vulnerable, Adrian said without judgment. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be wanted. I went on one coffee date with him. One. He talked about his business, his travels, his plans. It felt normal. But then... She closed her eyes, remembering. He kept texting. All day, every day. Good morning messages. How was your lunch messages? What are you wearing messages? At first I thought it was sweet. Attentive. When did it change? When I told him I wasn't feeling a romantic connection and wanted to just be friends. The memory made her stomach clench. His face just shifted, like someone had flipped a switch. He said I was confused, that I was just afraid of how intense our connection was, that all good relationships required patience and persistence. Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that felt both protective and intimate. And when you insisted, the flowers started. Expensive arrangements delivered to my apartment, my office, my gym, always with notes about how beautiful I was, how perfect we were together, how he was willing to wait for me to come to my senses. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. My neighbors thought it was romantic. My mom kept asking when I was going to give such a devoted man a real chance. No one believed you when you said it felt wrong? How do you explain that someone's love feels like suffocation? That their devotion makes your skin crawl? On paper, Marcus was everything a woman was supposed to want. Successful, persistent, romantic. The problem was me, everyone said. I was too picky, too damaged from my ex, too afraid of commitment. Adrian's grip on her hand tightened. The problem was never you. The quiet certainty in his voice almost broke her. 3 months of doubting herself, of wondering if she really was the problem. And this man she'd known for less than a day could see the truth everyone else had missed. It got worse after I got the restraining order, she continued. He couldn't approach me directly anymore, so he got creative. Following me just far enough away to stay legal. Showing up at places he knew I'd be. Creating fake social media accounts to monitor my online activity. Always just smart enough to stay on the right side of the law. Until today. Until today. She turned to look at him in the dim emergency lighting. Your turn. What made you so certain that everyone wants something from you? Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that spoke of old wounds never quite healed. I was 22 when my startup sold for $40 million, he said. Overnight, I went from a broke college kid eating ramen to someone worth more money than I could spend in a lifetime. The transition was educational. How so? I learned that my girlfriend of 2 years had been feeding information about our relationship to a tabloid blogger. I learned that my best friend had been recording our conversations, hoping to catch me saying something compromising he could sell. I learned that my own brother had taken out loans against my future earnings without telling me. The casual way he delivered the betrayals made them somehow more devastating. This wasn't fresh pain. This was scar tissue, old wounds that had healed wrong. Everyone I'd trusted had turned me into a commodity, Adrian continued. Even my parents started treating me differently. Every conversation became about what I could do for the family business, who I should marry to expand our social connections, which charities would give us the best publicity. That's why you don't date. I date. His smile was wry. Models, actresses, socialites, women who want to be seen with me, who understand it's transactional. Appearances at galas, arm candy for business functions. Everyone gets what they want, no one gets hurt. That sounds lonely. It is. The admission was so quiet she almost missed it. But it's safe. I know their motivations, they know mine. No one pretends it's about love. Zara studied his profile in the dim light, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. The controlled distance, the careful formality, the surprise when she'd kissed him. It all made sense now. Is that why you helped me today? Because I didn't know who you were. I helped you because you needed help. He turned to face her fully. But I stayed because for 10 minutes, you looked at me like I was just a person. Not a bank account or opportunity or a prize to be won. Just Adrian. You are just Adrian. The words came out more emotional than she'd intended. Money doesn't change who you are underneath. Doesn't it? His laugh was bitter. I haven't had a genuine conversation with anyone in years. I analyze every word people say, looking for ulterior motives. I have a team of people whose job is to investigate anyone I spend more than an hour with. I don't trust anyone, and I don't let anyone close enough to matter. But you're here with me. Yeah. He squeezed her hand. I'm here with you. The weight of that admission hung between them. Here was a man who'd built walls high enough to keep out armies, and somehow she'd slipped through simply by needing help instead of wanting something. Adrian, she said quietly. I'm glad Marcus followed me to that coffee shop. His smile was the first genuinely happy expression she'd seen from him. Even though it got us trapped underground with a few hundred strangers? Especially because of that. She leaned against his shoulder, feeling his arm come around her automatically. Otherwise, I might have talked myself out of this. Out of what? Letting myself fall for a man who's completely wrong for me on paper but feels absolutely right everywhere else. In the dim emergency lighting of an underground parking garage, surrounded by the soft sounds of displaced people settling in for a long night, Adrian cross-kissed Zara Williams like she was the most precious thing in his carefully controlled world. Because maybe, just maybe, she was. 5 hours of their underground exile brought unexpected gifts. Someone had found a portable speaker, and soft jazz now floated through the parking garage. A few couples had started slow dancing near the elevators, turning crisis into an impromptu community gathering. Children who had been cranky earlier were now asleep in their parents' arms, while adults shared stories and phone numbers, united by their shared experience. Zara watched it all from her spot beside Adrian, marveling at how quickly strangers had become temporary family. There's something beautiful about this, she said quietly. All these people taking care of each other. Crisis has a way of stripping away pretense, Adrian replied, his arm tightening around her where she'd settled against his side. Shows you who people really are underneath the masks. They'd spent the last hour trading stories, not the painful ones from their past, but the lighter memories that had shaped them. Zara had told him about her grandmother's Sunday dinners, where half the neighborhood would show up and somehow there was always enough food. Adrian had shared memories of building blanket forts with his younger sister before success changed everything, back when they were just two kids with big dreams and bigger imaginations. I haven't thought about those forts in years, Adrian said, wonder in his voice. Emma used to insist they were magical portals to other worlds. Smart kid. Where is she now? Married to a teacher in Vermont. 2 kids, a garden, a dog named Biscuit. His smile was soft, genuine. She's the only one who still sees me as just her annoying big brother. That's precious. Do you see her often? Adrian's expression flickered. Not as much as I should. It's complicated, being around her family. Her husband gets weird about money, either trying too hard to impress me or working overtime to prove he doesn't need my help. The kids don't understand why Uncle Adrian lives so far away or why he can't just come to their school plays. Maybe they just want Uncle Adrian, not Billionaire Adrian, Zara suggested gently. Maybe. He was quiet for a moment. Emma keeps telling me I'm overthinking it, that love doesn't come with strings attached. But when you've had enough strings wrapped around your throat, you forget what it feels like to breathe freely, Zara finished. I get it. After Marcus, I stopped trusting my own instincts. Every friendly conversation felt like a trap. Even today, when you asked for help. She considered this. No, actually. With you, I knew immediately that you were safe. Not safe like boring, safe like home. The word hung between them, loaded with implications neither was quite ready to examine. Home meant permanence, commitment, futures planned together. It meant everything they'd both learned to avoid. "I've been thinking," Adrian said carefully, "about what happens when this is over. When they catch Marcus, when life goes back to normal." Zara's stomach tightened. Here it comes, she thought. The gentle letdown, the kind explanation of why this was just crisis bonding, why they came from different worlds, why it could never work. "I don't want normal," he continued, surprising her. "I want whatever this is between us. I want to take you to dinner somewhere Marcus will never find you. I want to meet your grandmother, if she's still around, and hear more stories about those Sunday dinners. I want to show you my sister's blanket fort blueprints and watch you laugh at my childhood engineering disasters." Her heart stopped. "Adrian, I know it's crazy. I know we've known each other for less than 8 hours. I know my world is complicated and your world is simpler, and mixing them together might be a disaster." His words came faster now, as if he was afraid she'd stop him. "But I also know that I've felt more myself in this parking garage with you than I have in years of board meetings and charity galas." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try. Real try, not the careful, calculated relationships I'm used to. I want to see what happens when two people who've given up on love decide to be brave together." The music shifted to something slower, more romantic, and couples around them drew closer. Zara watched an elderly man help his wife to her feet, saw them move together in a dance they'd probably perfected over decades of marriage. That could be them someday, she thought with startling clarity. That could be their future if they were brave enough to reach for it. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of Marcus. Of this. Of you. Of wanting something so much that losing it would break me." Adrian shifted to face her fully, his hands cupping her face with that same gentle reverence she remembered from their first kiss. "What if we don't lose it? What if we're both tired of being afraid? What if your world doesn't accept me? What if the press decides I'm a gold digger or social climber? What if—" He silenced her with a kiss that tasted like possibility and promises. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Then we'll face it together," he said simply. "I've spent years letting other people's opinions control my happiness. I'm done with that. And I've spent months letting fear control mine." She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in ages. "Maybe it's time we both tried something different." Is that a yes? That's a yes to trying. A yes to seeing what happens when we choose hope over fear. A yes to. She gestured around the parking garage, at the couples dancing, the families creating warmth in cold concrete. All of this. Whatever this becomes. Adrian's smile could have powered the entire building. "I love the sound of that." For the first time since Marcus had entered her life, Zara allowed herself to imagine a future that didn't involve looking over her shoulder. A future where someone chose her not because he couldn't let her go, but because he couldn't imagine letting her go. "Dance with me," Adrian said suddenly, standing and offering his hand. "Here. Now. Especially here. Especially now." As she took his hand and let him pull her into his arms, Zara thought this might be the most romantic moment of her life. Dancing in an underground parking garage to borrowed music, surrounded by strangers who'd become witnesses to something beautiful. They swayed together in their own bubble of intimacy, and for a perfect moment, the world felt safe and right and full of infinite possibility. The all-clear announcement came at 2:47 a.m., crackling through the PA system like a gunshot in the peaceful parking garage. "Ladies and gentlemen, the building has been cleared for re-entry. Thank you for your patience during this difficult evening." Zara jerked awake in Adrian's arms, disoriented and momentarily panicked. They'd been dozing against his car, her head on his shoulder, his jacket wrapped around both of them like a cocoon. Around them, other people were stirring, gathering belongings, preparing to return to their interrupted lives. "It's over," Adrian murmured against her hair, but something in his voice had changed. The intimacy of the past few hours was already fading, replaced by the careful control she'd first noticed in the coffee shop. They rode the elevator to the lobby in silence, surrounded by exhausted strangers who'd shared their underground adventure. But the spell was breaking. Zara could feel it in the way Adrian's posture straightened, in how his phone buzzed incessantly with messages he couldn't ignore, in the gradual return of the invisible barriers that separated his world from hers. The lobby was chaos. News crews, police officers, FBI agents, building security, all creating a maze of authority and attention that made Zara's skin crawl. She'd hoped to slip out quietly, but the moment they stepped off the elevator, the circus found them. "Mr. Cross." A reporter thrust a microphone toward Adrian. "Can you comment on the bomb threat targeting your offices specifically?" "Mr. Cross, is it true this was related to a personal matter involving a woman? Are you dating someone new? Is she here with you tonight?" Adrian's arm tightened protectively around Zara's waist, but she could feel his tension ratcheting higher with each question. This was his nightmare, his private life becoming public spectacle, his carefully guarded world exposed to scrutiny. "No comment," he said firmly, guiding her toward a side exit. But they weren't fast enough. "Ms. Williams." Another reporter had done her homework. "Zara Williams, isn't it? You're the marketing consultant who's been stalked by Marcus Hendricks for the past 3 months." Zara's blood turned to ice. They knew her name. They knew about Marcus. Which meant, is it true that Mr. Hendricks called in tonight's bomb threat after seeing you with Mr. Cross? Are you using Seattle's most eligible bachelor as protection from your stalker? The words hit like physical blows. Around them, cameras flashed, recording her shock, her horror, Adrian's barely controlled fury. She could already see tomorrow's headlines. "Gold digger uses stalker drama to trap billionaire," or "Crisis romance. Marketing consultant's dangerous game." "Zara," Adrian started, but she was already pulling away from him. "I need to go." Her voice sounded strange, hollow. "I need to get out of here. Not alone. Not with Marcus still. Marcus isn't the only threat anymore, is he?" She gestured at the circus around them, at the reporters already typing their stories, at the photographers capturing every moment of her humiliation. "Look at this, Adrian. Look what being with me has done to your privacy." "I don't care about." "You do care. You should care." The exhaustion of the night, the emotional roller coaster, the sudden harsh return to reality. It all crashed over her at once. This is exactly what you've spent years avoiding. Messy. Public. Complicated. Adrian's security detail was pushing through the crowd toward them, creating a pathway to his waiting car. But Zara could see something dying in his eyes as he processed the full implications of what was happening. His private world, the thing he protected most fiercely, was being dissected in real time by strangers with cameras and deadlines. "Mr. Cross, how long have you been dating Ms. Williams? Is this a publicity stunt for her marketing business? What do you say to critics who claim she's exploiting her stalker situation for financial gain?" That last question shattered something inside Zara. She looked at Adrian and saw the exact moment he realized what this would mean. Board meetings discussing his judgment, shareholders questioning his leadership, his carefully maintained image of controlled professionalism destroyed by association with her chaos. "This was a mistake," she whispered, backing away from him. "All of it. I should never have involved you." "Zara, don't. You were right the first time. We come from different worlds. I'm going to destroy your reputation, and you're going to resent me for it." Her voice was getting stronger now, fed by self-preservation and the bitter certainty that fairy tales didn't happen to women like her. Better to end this now before Before what? Adrian's voice cut through the chaos around them. Before we give this a real chance? Before I fall any harder for someone who's going to wake up tomorrow and realize that loving me isn't worth the cost. The words hung between them like a chasm. Around them, the reporters sensed blood in the water. Cameras capturing every moment of their very public breakup. This would be the story. Not the bomb threat, not Marcus's escalation, but the dramatic collapse of a romance that had lasted less than 12 hours. You think I'm going to walk away because of them? Adrian gestured at the crowd. After everything we shared tonight? I think you're a smart businessman who knows a bad investment when he sees one. The words tasted like poison, but she forced them out. And I'm the worst possible investment you could make. Adrian's security chief appeared at his elbow. Sir, we need to go. Now. Give us a minute. Sir. The man's tone was urgent. We've just received credible intelligence that Hendricks is in the building. He came in with the emergency responders. The blood drained from Zara's face. Marcus was here. Had been watching, waiting, probably enjoying the spectacle of her humiliation. Get her out of here, Adrian ordered his security team. No. Zara stepped back, away from his protection, away from the safety he represented. This is my problem. I won't drag you down with me anymore. Zara. Goodbye, Adrian. She turned and walked into the crowd of reporters, letting them swallow her whole. Let them have their story about the desperate woman who'd tried to trap a billionaire. Let them paint her as the villain if it meant protecting him from the chaos she'd brought into his life. Behind her, she heard Adrian calling her name, but she didn't look back. She couldn't afford to look back. What's the hardest choice you've ever had to make to protect someone you love? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes love means letting go. Zara made it exactly 3 blocks before the adrenaline wore off and reality crashed over her like ice water. She stood on the empty Seattle sidewalk at 3:15 a.m., rain beginning to fall, with no car, no plan, and nowhere safe to go. The reporters had gotten their sound bites and moved on to chase other stories, leaving her alone with the consequences of her dramatic exit. Her apartment wasn't safe. Marcus knew where she lived. Her office was out of the question. Friends. After 3 months of Marcus's escalating behavior, most of her social circle had grown tired of her drama and started declining invitations, leaving her more isolated than she'd realized. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and called an Uber, then immediately canceled it. What if Marcus was tracking her phone? What if he was watching, waiting for her to be vulnerable and alone? This is what you wanted, she told herself bitterly. Independence. No billionaire complications. Just you and your problems like it's always been. But the truth was, she'd never felt more terrified or more alone. 8 blocks away, Adrian stood in his penthouse office, staring out at the city lights while his security team briefed him on Marcus's location. His hands were clenched into fists, his jaw tight with barely controlled rage. Not at Zara, but at himself. Sir, we've lost visual on both targets, his security chief reported. Ms. Williams disabled the GPS on her phone approximately 10 minutes ago, and Hendricks vanished in the crowd outside the building. We're expanding the search grid, but she's out there alone because of me. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless in the way that meant he was feeling too much to process. Because I let her walk away. Sir, with respect, she chose to leave. You tried to. I tried to what? Protect her. Protect myself. Adrian turned from the window, his expression haunted. Do you know what she said to me down there? She said I made her feel safe. Like home. And the first time my world got complicated, I let her think she was the problem. His phone buzzed with another update from his PR team, another strategy for managing the media fallout. Another reminder of all the reasons why getting involved with Zara's drama was a bad business decision. He deleted the message without reading it. "Cancel the PR meeting," he said suddenly. "Sir." "Cancel it. Cancel all of it. The damage control, the strategic response, the carefully worded statements." Adrian's voice grew stronger with each word. "I'm done letting other people's opinions dictate my choices." He grabbed his car keys, ignoring his security team's protests. "She's out there alone with a man who's already escalated to terrorism. Nothing else matters right now. Mr. Cross, if you go after her without backup, then I go after her without backup." Adrian was already moving toward the elevator. Sometimes the most important decisions are the ones that don't make sense on paper. Meanwhile, Zara had found temporary refuge in a 24-hour diner 6 blocks from Adrian's building. The fluorescent lights were harsh, the coffee was terrible, and the night shift waitress looked at her with the weary sympathy reserved for the desperate and displaced. But it was warm, public, and safe. She sat in a corner booth with a clear view of both entrances. Her laptop open to job listings in other cities. Portland, San Francisco, anywhere Marcus wouldn't think to follow. She could start over, build a new life where billionaire CEOs and obsessive stalkers were just bad memories. The bell above the diner door chimed, and her heart stopped. Marcus walked in like he belonged there, scanning the room with predatory patience before his eyes found hers. He smiled, that same charming, devastating smile that had fooled her 6 months ago, and slid into the booth across from her without invitation. "Hello, beautiful," he said softly. "We need to talk." Zara's hand moved slowly toward her phone, but Marcus shook his head. "I wouldn't. Not unless you want to involve more innocent people in our business." His tone was conversational, reasonable, but his eyes held the flat emptiness she'd learned to fear. Like that elderly couple by the window, or the pregnant waitress who's been so kind to you. "What do you want, Marcus?" "What I've always wanted. You. Us. The life we're supposed to have together." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "Tonight was unfortunate. All that drama, all those cameras. But it proved something important. He doesn't really want you, does he? The moment things got complicated, the moment loving you became inconvenient, he let you walk away." The words hit like surgical strikes, finding every insecurity Zara had been trying to suppress. "That's not. It is, though. Men like Adrian Cross don't fall in love with women like you. They use you for entertainment, for novelty, and when the cost gets too high, they discard you." Marcus's smile widened. "But I'm different. I've never wavered, never doubted, never let anything stand between us. That's real love, Zara. Permanent. Unchanging." "That's not love," she whispered. "That's obsession. Call it what you want. It's more than he offered you." Zara stared at this man who'd turned her life into a nightmare, who'd terrorized an entire building to get her attention, who sat across from her now speaking about love like it was something he understood. And for one terrible moment, she wondered if he was right. Maybe she had been fooling herself about Adrian. Maybe the connection she'd felt was just desperation and proximity and the intoxicating fantasy of being chosen by someone who could have anyone. Then she thought about the way Adrian had listened to her story without judgment, the way he'd shared his own wounds, the way he'd looked at her like she was precious, like she mattered, like she was worth protecting. "You're wrong," she said, her voice growing stronger. "About him. About us. About everything." Marcus's expression darkened. "We'll see about that. Because here's what's going to happen." The diner door burst open with enough force to rattle the windows. Adrian stood silhouetted in the doorway, rain-soaked and furious, his eyes scanning the room until they found her. The relief that crossed his face when he saw her was quickly replaced by something harder when he spotted Marcus. "Step away from her," Adrian said quietly, but his voice carried across the entire diner. Marcus didn't move. "This is a private conversation." "No," Adrian said, walking toward their booth with deliberate, controlled steps. "This is harassment. This is stalking. This is over." He reached their table and extended his hand to Zara. "Come with me." It was a choice. Not a command, not a demand, but an invitation. A chance to choose love over fear, hope over safety, the unknown future over the familiar nightmare. Zara looked at Adrian's outstretched hand, then at Marcus's face twisted with rage and entitlement. She made her choice. Zara took Adrian's hand. The moment their fingers touched, she felt the same electric connection that had sparked in that coffee shop kiss. But this time, it wasn't born from desperation. This was choice. This was courage. This was love choosing itself despite every rational reason to run. Marcus's face contorted with rage. "You're making a mistake, Zara. He'll abandon you the moment." "The moment what?" Adrian's voice was deadly quiet as he helped Zara stand. "The moment loving her requires something from me? The moment it costs me something? You're right, Marcus. It will cost me. My privacy, my carefully controlled image, probably some business relationships." He looked directly into Marcus's eyes. "And I've never been happier to pay a price in my life." The diner had gone silent except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of rain against windows. The pregnant waitress had moved protectively closer to the elderly couple, while the night cook peered out from the kitchen, phone in hand, clearly ready to call for help. "She doesn't love you," Marcus said desperately, his composure finally cracking. "She can't. She barely knows you. What you felt tonight, that was trauma bonding, not love. She was using you for protection." "Maybe she was," Adrian replied calmly, never releasing Zara's hand. "Maybe that's how this started. But you know what, Marcus? I don't care how love begins. I care about how it grows. And what I feel for Zara has nothing to do with how we met and everything to do with who she is." Zara felt tears spilling down her cheeks, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of recognition, of being truly seen and chosen despite everything. "You want to know what love looks like?" Adrian continued, his voice gaining strength. "It's not flowers sent to someone who asked you to stop. It's not following someone who told you no. It's not terrorizing an entire building because you can't accept rejection." Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." The new voice came from the diner entrance, where two Seattle police officers stood with FBI agent Rebecca Torres. "Marcus Hendricks, you're under arrest for making terroristic threats, stalking, harassment, and violation of a restraining order." As they read Marcus's rights and led him away, he kept looking back at Zara with eyes full of wounded confusion, as if he genuinely couldn't understand why she'd choose someone else over his obsessive devotion. Even now, even facing arrest, he couldn't see her as a person with her own agency. "How did you know where to find us?" Zara asked Agent Torres. "Mr. Cross called it in. Said he'd found you but needed backup before confronting your stalker." Torres smiled. "Smart man. We've been building a case against Hendricks for weeks. Tonight's bomb threat was the final piece we needed for federal charges." As the police cars drove away with Marcus in custody, Zara and Adrian stood outside the diner in the gentle Seattle drizzle. The city was waking up around them, early commuters hurrying past, coffee shops opening their doors, the first hints of dawn touching the horizon. "So," Adrian said softly, his hands cupping her face the way he had in that first desperate kiss, "what happens now?" Now you probably have a dozen voicemails from your PR team, Zara said, managing a watery smile. And I probably have reporters camped outside my apartment. And the internet is probably having a field day with pictures of us from tonight. Probably. His thumb traced her cheekbone, wiping away a tear. Are you okay with that? I'm terrified, she admitted. Your world is going to eat me alive, and I'm going to say the wrong thing at fancy parties, and someone's going to dig up embarrassing photos from my college years, and... He silenced her with a kiss that tasted like rain and possibility and the promise of tomorrow. What if we face it together? He said against her lips, echoing his words from the parking garage. What if we stop letting fear make our choices for us? What if I fall completely in love with you and you decide I'm too complicated after all? What if you fall completely in love with me and I spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift? The question hung between them like a bridge, waiting for her to cross it. Around them, Seattle was coming to life, oblivious to the fact that two people were standing on a sidewalk choosing their entire future. I already am, Zara whispered. Completely in love with you, I mean. It's terrifying and irrational and probably the best decision I've ever made. Adrian's smile could have powered the entire city. I love you too. I love your courage, your strength, the way you protect other people even when you're scared. I love that you kissed me in that coffee shop and changed my entire world in one perfect moment. So what do we do now? Now we go home. We sleep. And tomorrow we figure out how to build a life together. He paused, his expression growing serious. But first I need you to know something. This won't be easy. Dating me comes with complications. Security, media attention, people who will judge you for being with me. Are you sure you're ready for that? Zara thought about Marcus's words in the diner, about how Adrian would abandon her when things got difficult. She thought about the reporters tonight, the photographers, the strangers who would dissect her life for entertainment. She thought about all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Then she thought about the way Adrian had listened to her story without judgment, the way he'd shared his own wounds, the way he'd come looking for her when she'd walked away, the way he'd chosen her again and again, every time it mattered. I'm sure, she said firmly. Besides, after Marcus, how hard could it be? Adrian laughed, a real, genuine, completely unguarded sound that made her fall a little deeper in love with him. Come on, he said, taking her hand and leading her toward his car. Let's go home. As they drove through the awakening city, Zara realized that for the first time in months, she felt safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. Safe to love and be loved. Safe to be herself. Safe to believe in happy endings. The radio played softly as Adrian drove, his free hand intertwined with hers, and Zara thought about how sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most desperate moments. How sometimes you have to lose yourself completely to find the person you're meant to be with. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, a kiss meant to save you ends up saving you both. What moment changed your entire life? Drop a comment below. I love hearing about the unexpected turns that lead to happiness.
Thanks for staying with us till the end. I know you enjoyed this story, and there are so many more waiting for you. Just click the image on your screen to watch the next one, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment of these inspiring, heart-touching stories.